everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today's video, as you can tell, is another fall video and we're going to be talking about a bunch of cozy books to read this fall season. Now, I was kind of overwhelmed because I didn't know where to actually start looking for books that were kind of the more autumnal, atmospheric kind of vibes. So I went and I scoured YouTube and I watched a bunch of videos, and these are the recommendations that I found. And I'm super excited to share them with you all, and I got them from my local library. So if buying books is a little bit more expensive or it's just not something that you really want to do, the library is definitely a great option. It supports them and it also saves you money as well. And that's exactly what I did. I went to our local library and found all of these, and I'm very excited to share them with you all because I think we're gonna have a really good time reading this year. Like, these are a bunch of really good books that I'm excited about. I mean, we have witches, ghosts, vampires, all the things. So go ahead and grab yourself a cozy beverage and a blanket like I have. I picked hot chocolate because I love hot chocolate and that's just what I was feeling at the moment. So grab whatever you like and let's get into the fall books to read this year. So my very first recommendation is not technically one book, it's three, but it's a series. And it's a discovery of witches, and they have actually created a TV show, and it is so good. It's not super to the T like the book, but it's pretty close. And it's basically about Diana. She goes to Oxford and she is a witch, and she lost her parents to a mysterious accident that you find out there's a lot more to it. She's at Oxford studying alchemy whenever she meets Matthew de Clermont. While she's at Oxford, she also studies a lot at the library, so she's there one day and she checks out a manuscript that she was studying called Ashmole 782. And it's like an ancient manuscript that was lost in time, and it basically describes how all these creatures were created and how they can be destroyed. So it's a very, very precious manuscript. She learns there's a lot more to her witchiness than what she even realizes, and there's just so many twists and turns. I could not put it down. And this is the first book, and the second book is Shadow of Night, which is the one that I'm reading currently. And I did recommend these last year in my fall reading, but I was taking the real estate course at that time, and that was a ton of reading because I took it online. So I only made it halfway through this book, and I'm excited to just keep it going this year. And I do have the third book here. It was a Christmas present and it's the Book of Life. So all three of these just carry into each other. I'm not going to read what these two are about because it'll give away spoilers for this one. But if you love witches and vampires and like history and magic, all the things like that, I would totally check these out. And it's a very fall atmosphere. It's always pretty chilly. It's definitely the fall winter time there, and it's like an old university. It's a really cool dynamic between the characters and also a very cool setting, and she does a really great job describing the setting so you feel like you're there. But these are definitely perfect fall reads. So the next book is by Neil Gaiman and it's called Neverwhere, and I've never read anything by him before, but I've heard that he is a great author and I'm excited to delve into his writing. So I'm just going to read the back to you really quickly because I can't remember totally what it's about, but it was in a lot of videos that I watched. So a young London businessman with a good heart whose life is changed forever when he stops to help a bleeding girl, an act of kindness that plunges him into a world that he never dreamed existed. Slipping through the cracks of reality, Richard lands in Neverwhere, a London of shadows and darkness, monsters and saints, murderers and angels that exists entirely in a subterranean labyrinth. Neverwhere is home to Dor, the mysterious girl Richard helped in the London above. Here in Neverwhere, Dor is a powerful noble woman who has vowed to find the evil agent of her family's slaughter and thwart the destruction of this strange underworld kingdom. If Richard is ever to return to his former life and home, he must join Lady Dor's quest to save her world and may well die trying. So it sounds really, really good, and it has monsters and darkness and just all the fall things. So it just seems like a really good fall read, and I'm excited to check it out. But the next book is one that I actually got at a little like book exchange that we had, and it's called Bellman Black. And it's about this guy. He basically uses a slingshot and it hits this bird and kills it, but he lives his life to where like it just doesn't bother him anymore, and he kind of just put it behind him. but then years later, a stranger mysteriously enters William's life. His fortunes begin to turn, and the terrible and unforeseen consequences of his past indiscretion take root. In a desperate bid to save the only precious thing he has left, he enters into a rather strange bargain with an even stranger partner. It has a lot of darkness from what I can tell to it, magic and spells, and it just seems like a very autumnal book. The next book that I have is by Alice Hoffman, and it's Magic Lessons. And this is a prequel to a series called, or a book called Practical Magic. I haven't read those, and I just heard of them whenever I was looking into this book. But it sounds pretty good. It's all about witches and magic, and about, it takes place in Salem, so it refers back to the women getting accused of witchcraft back in the 1600s, and it takes place in the 1600s. But basically this girl, Maria Owens, she is betrayed by a man that loved her, and she ends up moving to Salem, Massachusetts, and invokes a curse on her family. Sounds pretty intense. I mean, putting a curse on your family is pretty nuts. So that sounds like a really good book. Anything with witches and magic, I'm all about it. And especially Salem during the fall time. I feel like that's like one of the #1 places like during the fall, just because of the Salem witch trials and how dark that whole era of time was. So I think it's going to be really interesting to read this book, and I'm really, really excited to. So next up we have The Dark Witch by Nora Roberts, and this is it's part of a trilogy as well. It's book 1 of the Cousins O'Dwyer trilogy, which I have not read nor heard of, but I'm sure this cover looks really good and the plot seems really good, so we may be looking at a new trilogy here. It's basically about this girl. She goes and she moves to Ireland, and she lives with her cousins for a little bit, and of course there's a little love interest as well as she meets a guy that she likes. And while she's in Ireland living with her cousins, she realizes that there's actually an ancient evil entangled in her family tree, and basically how to conquer it. So I'm all about it. It has magic and witches, like I said, and it takes place in a very eerie looking home, so I feel like this is the perfect combination for fall. The next recommendation that I kept coming across in a bunch of different videos is called Rebecca by Daphne Du Maurier, and basically it's this woman who marries a man, but his previous wife had passed away, and she's basically kind of living in the shadows of the wife that passed away, and they kind of left the previous wife's stuff like kind of untouched and preserved. So kind of as she's going and adjusting to this life, she's starting to uncover a bunch of dark secrets involved with that. So I'm really excited for this. I saw really good reviews on it on Goodreads, and it kept getting recommended in the books, and it just seems pretty eerie, and they live in a mansion, an isolated gray stone mansion. Yeah, sounds pretty creepy. So the next book is going to be The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. So this one I was a little on the fence about, just because I'm just not a circus person. I just never really have been. They kind of creep me out a little bit. I don't know, not every single circus, but just I don't like the vibes of circuses. But the way this one was described by everyone on YouTube, it sounds really, really beautiful. The descriptions, it's one of those books that's very atmospheric and gets very deep into descriptions of the setting, the food, but it's basically about a circus that just like pops up, and there's like magic and all kinds of really cool things in here, so I'm excited to check it out. It's not something I would normally go for, so I'm curious to see how I'm gonna like it. If you've read it, let me know. Next up is one that I stumbled across in the library. I wasn't even looking for it, I just kind of saw it. But it's called A Secret History of Witches by Louisa Morgan. The cover is so cool. It's little potion bottles. I think that's adorable. It says that it's a sweeping historical saga that traces 5 generations of fiercely powerful mothers and daughters, witches whose magical inheritance is both a dangerous threat and an extraordinary gift. So it's a lot of spells and magic, and I think it takes place, it's whenever World War II is starting, so their magic is needed the most. So it seems like a really cool book, and I'm excited to read it because, like I said, and as you can tell, I love witches, I love magic, I love that kind of stuff. So right up my alley. The next one is one that I saw recommended a few times as well, and it's called Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia. And it's about this girl who goes to the Mexican countryside to visit her cousin, who's been sending a bunch of letters to them, basically saying that her life is in danger. She gets there and her cousin has tuberculosis, but the main character ends up just kind of staying with her for a little bit. And it takes place in like an old creepy house, almost like a dark eerie mansion, I assume is what it was sounding like. And just the whole vibe of it is very, very dark. I've heard it was a darker book, so I'm excited to delve into it because again, this isn't something I normally would have gravitated towards. So I'm eager to see how it's gonna be. The next book that I found is Safe House by Jo Jackman. So this one is about a woman that moves to a remote coastal village trying to get away from her past. She was in prison for giving a false alibi for a murderer. So she obviously was in prison for a little bit and she got out, moved to this small town to just kind of start over. And while she's there, she starts to feel pretty eerie, almost like someone's watching her. And one of her new friends ends up disappearing, and then it just confirms that like, hey, something's up. So I'm curious to see who would be there, why they'd be there. I don't know. I'm curious to see what the whole plot's gonna be, but it sounds really good, very eerie, very thrilling. So we'll see how it is. The next one is not going to be everyone's cup of tea, but I'm very into the paranormal, and if you are too, you may like this book. But it's called The Three Gates of the Dead by Jonathan Ryan. It's all about demons. So I'll just read you the back of it really quickly just so you can kind of see what it's about. Conflicted with his faith in God and the hypocrisy of the church, Aiden Schaefer, a young assistant pastor, is in a constant state of spiritual turmoil. When Aiden learns that his ex-fiancée is the first victim in a string of ritualistic killings, he finds himself in the middle of an even deeper fight. Tormented by demonic threats and haunted by spirits, Aiden throws himself into investigating. All the while, supernatural forces have begun to attack the people around him. The more questions he asks, the more he is drawn into the world of mysterious Anglican priest, a paranormal investigation group, and a rogue female detective investigating the murders. As the gruesome rituals escalate, ancient hidden secrets threaten to rip Aiden's world apart. So, oh, I love paranormal stuff, so this seemed very, very fall, obviously, because it's very, very creepy. It sounds intense, and I'm very excited because this stuff just fascinates me. So if it fascinates you too, you might like this one. The very last book that I found is A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. And I know that there's a few books after this one too. I don't know if it's a trilogy or I know it's a series. I'm not sure how many books are in it, but I've heard amazing reviews of these. And it's a fantasy book, so I figured it fit into the fall theme. It's about this 19-year-old girl. She killed a wolf in the woods and it comes back and she basically has to pay for what she did. I don't know, but it seems like there's a lot of magic and fantastical things in here, so I don't know. Like I said, this isn't something I normally would have gone for, but all the reviews on it were amazing and it looks like a very fall book. So if you've read this one, let me know. I know a lot of people have, but that is also on my list for this year. All right, you guys, so that is going to complete my fall reading list for 2021. If you have any book recommendations or if you've read any of these, leave it in the comments below. I love reading, so if you have any other recommendations that weren't in this video, I would love to hear them. And if you enjoyed, please give it a like and subscribe down below, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.